Gavarnie in southern France is the gateway to the Pyrenees, a key staging post on the historic pilgrims route to Santiago de Compostela. For over 100 years, tourists and troopers have mingled with mountaineers and explorers. For while the Pyrenees have always been the Cinderella of Europe's mountains, they still manage to attract a selection of discerning visitors, of which Nicholas Crane is the latest in a long line.
Quite a historic place, this, isn't it?
It is. In the Romantic age, this is where all the great writers and artists used to come and stay when they wanted to come and see the terrifying cliffs of Gavarnie. And that room up there, on the end of the first floor, is where Henry Russell stayed, a great hero.
A great explorer.
Yeah.
So is this the pilgrims route?
It is.
911k to Compostela. Good grief.
Yeah, what's that, 3 months walking? Which nowadays you can almost imagine walking for 3 months over the
Well, you might be able to do it, I can't.
plains of Spain, but to a medieval pilgrim, unbelievable hurdle.
I've come to these mountains with Nick. He's of a younger generation of explorers, but still in the mould of classic English eccentricity. The Crane family are well known for their globe-trotting exploits, and Nick in particular has undertaken a number of rather bizarre adventures, some of which he'd rather forget.
My cousin Richard and I decided on the spur of the moment to try and raise some money for a charity. So we thought we'd take these new fangled inventions called mountain bikes up the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, which has got a great big glacier on top. And of course mountain bikes in the mountains don't match at all. We ended up carrying these wretched bicycles, which weigh a ton, on our backs the whole way to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. Then we rode them around the rim of the crater. And then we had the fastest descent of Mount Kilimanjaro ever, I think, so we just got on the bikes on the crater rim and just shot straight down it.
That must have been amazing.
It was. So the reason I don't talk about it anymore is that mountain bikes are starting to do quite a lot of damage to the world's wilder places, and so I'm very embarrassed about the whole episode now.
In recent years, Nick Crane has travelled in a more environmentally friendly way, on foot. For our journey, we plan to walk through the spectacular portals of the Brèche de Roland and through Europe's miniature Grand Canyon, the Ordesa Gorge, before climbing over a high plateau to finish in the deep Anislo Valley. Our route was just a tiny part of a 10,000-kilometre marathon that Nick undertook across the mountain ranges of Europe. Today, though, he harbours some doubts about returning here.
I was slightly anxious about coming back. To have walked here, as I did before, took 3 or 4 months on my own through the mountains. Without wanting to sound airy-fairy, you definitely move into a different plane of existence. It's quite poignant to come back because the man who made the journey through these mountains 6 years ago is not the one who's on the mountainside this afternoon. People always think of the world as being three-dimensional, but there's this critical fourth dimension, time, so that you can never really come to the same place twice. All you can do is come back as a different person.
Nick's epic journey during 1992 and 93 lasted for 18 months and took him from the Atlantic coast of Spain to Istanbul. Our objective for today was less ambitious: the Cirque de Gavarnie, where we would stay overnight in one of the mountain huts which provide food and shelter.
It's quite atmospheric up here, isn't it?
It is. You sense something big about to happen as you come up
It's all
the skyline.
Now this is the top of the Cirque de Gavarnie, isn't it? Yes, it is. Look at it.
This is a
Look at it. Oh,
3,000-metre rock wall. Well, look at that strata.
look at that.
It's like a wave in the ocean.
Oh,
It is quite incredible.
it is just absolutely beautiful.
Next morning, we began by taking the well-trodden path up to one of the most spectacular features in the whole of the Pyrenees, the Brèche de Roland. Our route would then take us up to nearly 3,000 metres and through the Brèche, then crossing the border into Spain, through the lost world of a high limestone desert to the northern rim of the Ordesa Canyon.
Are you feeling refreshed and at one with the mountain after your first night?
I feel a lot better Cameron for being out of that mountain hut. About 3 o'clock this morning, I was seriously wondering whether or not to take my bivouac bag out into the snow to get a good night's sleep. There were so many people in that dormitory. You could hardly breathe. It's like a slave ship. Nothing like a good bit of glacier for getting the heart and lungs going after breakfast. I always have this little mantra that runs through my mind first thing in the morning. Slow and steady wins the pace. You know how you always get this urge when you set off in the morning to shoot away from the starting blocks like a gazelle, because you feel so great.
I have to say, it's a long time since I felt like a gazelle first thing in the morning.
You can have middle-aged and elderly gazelle. Sense the air getting thinner.
Yes, you feel it, don't you?
Less steps per breath.
Especially when you've only been here for a day.
This is a threshold of the Pyrenean journey for me, because you come up from the French side and it's all very busy and lots of people coming up to the Breche to see the view and so on, and step through this gap and it's like Alice through the looking glass. You're coming into a completely different world. Nobody goes with you. You go alone through this gap. And as I walked across the plateau, I kept turning around and taking back bearings on the compass, so that if the weather came in, the compass was already set, so I could get back to the Breche. Travelling alone, I was always very conscious that nobody would ever know where I was, so it was always a question of self-rescue. If I broke an ankle, then that was probably curtains, because you can't walk one-legged across any of this sort of landscape, so I couldn't even afford to twist an ankle.
There must have been thousands of little decisions to make along the way.
Every day, and they're the sorts of decisions that you never make in real life, because they're decisions that decide whether or not you're going to live often. And the classic one, and this happens time after time, you're going along a high valley, and ahead of you you've got two routes. In a way, it's an allegory for life. You've got two routes ahead of you. There's the shorter route over the high pass, or the longer route around the side of the massif. And the weather's looking a bit marginal, and you say, shall I go on the short route and take a risk, or shall I go the long route around the edge? You know, and how often do we have to face that in real life, the shortcut or the long, safe route?
You sound like a sermon.
Well, yeah, I don't mean it to be. It's interesting, because your life's on the line. I like that, you know, being committed to solving the riddle of a wilderness.
Nick's original journey through these mountains had been an unconventional one. He carried no tent or stove, but instead his equipment included an umbrella and folding trilby. By the time he got here, he'd settled into a routine.
I'd been walking for nearly 4 months, and I'd covered about 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres, I think. I was run in by then. I felt quite relaxed about it and confident.
How did you cope for money? Did your wife send money out to you, or did you carry a great big wad with you?
For the Eastern European section, I had $1,000 US in 1 and 5s down my leg, tied to my leg. It's a bit of a liability, because in Ukraine that was about 3 years' wages.
Cotton wool seas, look. Temperature inversion, that's wonderful.
The world's turned upside down. We spent yesterday looking up at the clouds, and now we're looking down at them.
That's amazing. This walk is just full of highlights.
Every 10 minutes something changes, isn't it? So we've got the ocean lapping at our feet now.
The scenery is dramatic, it really is dramatic.
I had been intrigued by Nick's almost insatiable desire to travel, with expeditions to Tibet, China, Afghanistan and Africa. Given Nick's family background, it's no surprise that such wanderlust is in the genes.
My mother and father took us camping when we were children, all over Europe. And then when I was 19, I read a book by Patrick Leigh Fermor. And I say taken by this book, I got on my bicycle. And I cycled from our home in Norwich to Greece with a Scottish friend. And it was just the most amazing adventure I'd ever had. We slept in ditches and in forests, and we had very little money. That self-propelled journey at the age of 19 started it all, because I realised that you didn't need money, all you needed was an old bicycle or a pair of boots.
Oh.
The beginning of the descent to Lost World.
Oh gosh, it looks like it too.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Doesn't feel as if anyone's been down here for a long while, Cameron.
This is most definitely very wild, rugged landscape.
It is. It's funny coming down here because I'm starting to get a sense of surprise that I came down here on my own 6 years ago.
Well, is there any feeling in retrospect that you made a mistake?
I didn't make a mistake, but I'm quite surprised that I came to do it on my own. I'm coming down here on my own, not knowing whether I could get down a canyon wall. Always trying to make it up as you go along.
I mean, it's quite an intricate route, really.
It is very intricate. I was relying an awful lot on intuition and just trying to read the landscape and fill in all the missing bits on a map myself. And this lake down here,
This lake.
or this plain, on the map it's marked as a
Yeah.
lake full of water. So when I set my compass on this blue dot on the map and I got here, I couldn't believe my eyes. It's like something out in the middle of the Sahara Desert. This is the point of maximum commitment on this walk because we're now too far from the hut that we spent last night in to get back before nightfall, and we can't get down the canyon either today. So if the storm comes in, we'll be bivouacking until it clears.
My word, you're a cheery fellow.
Ah, it's rather exciting. I like the idea of that. Being at the mercy of the weather.
But already my eyes were on the skyline and an object of his special dislike. I couldn't believe what lay ahead blocking our route.
What on earth is that up there?
You're not going to kick that one down too, are you, Cameron?
Well, it'd take me in a small army, I think. I think it's ugly and out of place. And I wish I could kick it down. I think if I tried to kick it down, it'd probably kick me back.
You'd break a toenail or two kicking that. Oh, look at that. That's wonderful. Look at that. Absolutely wonderful.
Those earlier comments about the weather turned out to be prophetic. I'd just pitched my tent before the storm broke. Nick, meanwhile, went off to find his own accommodation, which he thought was infinitely superior.
Cameron, you're sitting in a 5-star cave here. This cave is going to be much more comfortable in your tent. I can stand up in it, I can walk around. I could invite 20 people around for the evening. I've got a fantastic view. When the river comes up, you know, I'm not going to float away. Your tent's going to be floating away by morning, Cameron, if it goes on
when I
raining.
go into my tent at night, I don't want to stand up and walk around. I've done enough walking during the day. But I mean, you stayed in byres with cows and chicken huts and goodness knows what. I mean,
That's
that must
right.
have been pretty grim.
Cow sheds are bad news. Cow sheds are about the worst. In fact, I slept in a tenanted cow shed once, and that was really horrible because cows are very flatulent, and they're all night long, burping and worse, and the smell is unbelievable. And because they lick you and stuff, you're lying in a sleeping bag and you find a cow licking your face, and it's unpleasant. I didn't like that. Generally, cow sheds are not high on a low star rating in terms of overnight accommodation. Coffee. Here's a mug with a history, Cameron.
Certainly is.
That was the mug that I carried all the way across Europe, and the reason it's got all this black pitch on it is that I had nothing to... This is what I cooked on too, so if I wanted to eat something hot, I'd light a fire using sticks.
How do you actually cook a meal on that?
You just light a fire,
Right.
maybe get a couple of stones, make a little hearth, plonk it on and cook a meal. The only disadvantage with having a stainless steel mug for drinking coffee out of is that you get blisters on your lips if you drink it too quickly, which is mildly discomforting. Are you sure you don't want to sleep in this cave?
No, I don't think so. No. I like my tent.
It's small and clammy in a tent, isn't it?
No. No, it's small and warm and comfortable. You hear the pitter-patter of rain in the tent. It's lovely.
Doesn't the rain come in?
No, not at all.
The tent's as dry as caves.
There's some wet caves about.
Next day, we started early to negotiate a huge 1,000-metre descent into the depths of the Ardessa Gorge. Last time Nick was here, he had great difficulty finding a safe route down. Today, it wasn't any easier.
One of those moments when your umbrella can be your undoing.
Just a bit awkward, isn't it?
Certainly not the place to trip, is it? I've always wanted to come back here, to this place, to this actual cliff, and it still feels an unknown corner of Europe.
Does your memory suggest it was steeper or wilder or anything?
No, I'd say it's still pretty dramatic, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
I remember it being a genuinely awesome moment coming down here, and really enjoying it, the whole drama of it. Once I'd unlocked the key to getting down.
Oh, sunshine.
Lovely.
Wonderful. Well, it's pretty awesome just now. Oh, it's a bit squirmy, isn't
You
it?
might get wedged in here.
Yes, it's not quite a place for wide rucksacks.
Zigzag down. There's the path.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Whew. Good grief. Clinging onto the edge here.
God, doesn't it make you feel alive, this, Cameron?
Oh, yeah.
It's enormous, isn't it? The whole thing.
I've sort of run out of words to describe it. Everything sounds too much like a cliche.
They don't work, do they? When you come to somewhere that really is spectacular, the word no longer functions, doesn't do the job at all. Maybe we should go the other way and start thinking about feeling minute. Us humans regard ourselves as being rather large in the environment, don't we?
Yeah.
Controlling it, and then
And we're really pretty insignificant.
come somewhere like this and you feel very small and vulnerable and inconspicuous.
And thank God for it.
We dropped down into the Ardessa Canyon, only to climb back up the other side. There was an advantage, though. Our onwards route to the Goritz hut was along a flat belvedere, high above the canyon floor.
You ever ask yourself whether you'd like to be somewhere else? I do, and this is one of those moments when you absolutely don't want to be anywhere else in the world. There is a real sense of wonder to a place like this. It feels as if we've walked into one of those Arcadian paintings that the romantic landscape painters used to create, to fill the public with a sense of wonder for natural places. I always think of the Pyrenees as being rather the underdog of the European mountain ranges. And of course, the other thing, of course, which I keep forgetting, is that the maps on the Spanish side are absolutely terrible. So you get this really profound sense of wilderness because you don't know where you are half the time. That's like travelling was in the last century, where you had to use a bit of judgment and experience to find your way around. Sometimes I wonder whether I'd have preferred being alive 50 or 100 years ago before all of these huge changes had happened. Whew.
We're going to lose the canyon now, I think.
Yeah, it's the last we'll see of it. See all the way we came up, the whole way up.
Yeah, right along. I know, it's amazing. Just along a little shelf.
Nick Crane is best known as an explorer and ambitious walker, but he's also a writer. His solo trek across Europe provided him with the raw material, but turning that into a published work was even more lonely than the journey itself.
The great thing is travelling alone, you've got no companion, so you talk to your notebook. So when I get back home, open them all up on the table and I go through them and I write from really very disciplined hours. I start at about 8:30 in the morning and go through till 6 in the evening, and sometimes do an evening shift as well. It's very gruelling, and it's like mountaineering. It's an endurance exercise, and it's blood, sweat and tears, and it's breaking the pain barrier. I don't find it easy, and it doesn't get any easier at all, because as soon as you've mastered one level of writing, you just move the goalpost and make it even more difficult next time round. And I'm never happy with what I've done. I try very hard to try and write things that nobody's ever written before. I think it was Martin Amis, the novelist, who said that he didn't want any of his sentences in his books ever to read like a sentence that could have been written by anybody else. And I think if you try that hard with every sentence, you'll get somewhere.
See this place today?
It's taken a very long time, isn't it? I think I can smell the soup.
Oh. Inspiration for the last 100 metres. Quite a big hut, isn't it?
They always look bigger on the outside than on the inside, Cameron. Probably about 500 people jammed in there.
The final leg of our journey leaves the Goritz hut and takes us over a high plateau towards the Annislow Canyon in the romantically named area of Aragon, the end of our journey. But as usual, in this sort of terrain, the route was far from clear.
Everything's peeling away, leaving us just a pair of bods in the middle of the wilderness.
Let's just check the map, can we?
I think we'll have to.
Erratic crowds. I think we've left to decent weather as well.
I remember this as being really confusing because the path on the map isn't the same as the path on the ground.
So where are we?
The map marks the route as contouring around below the col.
Yeah.
And uncharacteristic of the Spanish, they put a grid line on here so we can actually zero the compass in. There, yeah. Okay, so that's north. Lift it off, turn it round. So in theory,
we're off that way.
We're going up that slope around the top of that black crag and then contouring round.
Once our walk was over, Nick would be travelling back to his home in the heart of London. I personally couldn't live in a city, and I was intrigued that someone who was a kindred spirit in almost every other way chose to live amidst the chaos and noise of Europe's largest conurbation.
I like extremes, Cameron, I like extremes. You know, out here we've got all this space to breathe and roam, and then in London you have this cultural human mayhem swirling around you like riptides, and it's very exciting. I think that both extremes are very exciting. In fact, I'm not sure I'd get as much out of the wilderness if I didn't live in the centre of London. Also, I like the human species. I think it's very exciting to be mixed with lots of other people, and London's a very, very vibrant, thrilling city to live in. A lot going on, a real melting pot of cultures, and a challenge to make it work.
Have you ever thought of yourself as having a split personality?
Yeah, often, yes. In fact, I was told by a psychiatrist not so long ago that I suffer from some kind of blame transference method, which I think schizophrenics use, where you actually have two personalities and you always hive the blame off onto the other one so you can never be responsible yourself.
How come you went to see a psychiatrist?
The psychiatrist came to see me, Cameron. A friend offering advice.
The beginning of your big journey across Europe, you said that you were going to do this big trip and you weren't even a walker. Would you consider yourself one now?
Well, what I didn't realise was that we're all walkers anyway. It doesn't need any training or particular skills. It's just a question of putting one foot in front of the other and not stopping for a long time. Yeah, I think I'm quite good at walking now.
We're almost at the end of our walk across this section of the Pyrenees. Have we had the best of the Pyrenees, do you think?
I think this little walk we've been on is probably the best in Europe. I can't think of anywhere else in Europe where you can find such an orchestral combination of landscapes. I mean, to go up to that little prelude up to the Breche with the sun shining on the rocks and then step through into this great barren wilderness. The storms, caves, the descent into the underworld, into the Odessa Canyon, and then the climb back up to the daylight, and then just gently higher and higher and higher until we reached this extraordinary place above the canyons of Aragon and these rolling plains running down into Spain. It's been an incredible walk.
From here it's all down, down, down into the valley.
It's a sheer spot, isn't it? It really does feel like the end of a walk, doesn't it? Everything comes to a stop.
Before we go down there, can we just have 2 minutes? 2 minutes here to say goodbye to all.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you as well, Cameron, because I didn't know I'd ever come back here, and it's even better second time round. It's been a bit of a homecoming, really, I suppose.